There is a version of this story where the government announces what it is doing, where someone stands at a podium and says plainly that the rules around your retirement savings are changing, that the space you have been building inside is shrinking, that the exit you thought you had is being narrowed. That version does not exist. It has never existed. What exists instead is two separate policy decisions made in two separate budget cycles, announced in two separate press releases that almost nobody read in full. And when you put them side by side, what you see is not coincidence. What you see is a closing. This is the story of that closing. Both sides of it. There is a particular kind of Canadian who is going to feel this most. Not the person who has never been able to save. Not the person who parks their money in a corporate holding structure with a team of accountants managing the exposure. The person who feels this is the one who has been doing everything right, the one who set up automatic contributions, the one who maxed the TFSA in January instead of waiting. The one who looked at their RRSP room on their notice of assessment every spring and actually used it. That person built their entire retirement architecture around two assumptions. First, that the registered accounts would keep pace with the real world. Second, that when those accounts were full, the non-registered account was the logical next step. Both assumptions are now under pressure. At the same time. From the same source. And almost nobody has connected those two things in the same sentence. By the time this video is over, you will not be able to unsee it.
If you believe
Let's start
financial
with this.
freedom starts with knowledge, subscribe to Financial Freedom Canada with Marcus. New videos every day to help you build lasting wealth.
Let's start with the side everyone has heard about, even if they haven't fully processed what it means. The TFSA was introduced in 2009. The contribution limit that year was $5,000. Today in 2026, that limit is $7,000, 17 years later. $7,000. If you hear that and think, well, that's still an increase, you are correct. The number is higher. But here's the thing about numbers in an economy where prices move, the number is not the point. The purchasing power behind the number is the point. Cumulative inflation in Canada from 2009 through 2026 is sitting above 47%. The TFSA limit across that same period has risen roughly 40%. That gap is not large in isolation. But it is not isolated, it compounds. Every year the limit stays flat while prices rise, the real value of that contribution room shrinks a little more. It is not dramatic, it is not a headline, it is the financial equivalent of a room that keeps getting smaller while the furniture stays the same size. You don't notice it until you can't move. And for the past 3 years, 2024, 2025, and 2026, the limit has not moved at all. Frozen at $7,000, 3 identical numbers in a row while grocery bills climbed, while insurance premiums climbed, while the actual cost of building a retirement in this country kept moving in one direction. The Parliamentary Budget Office has been clear about what the fiscal landscape looks like from here. Average annual deficits of $64 billion projected through 2029 and 2030. A debt-to-GDP ratio peaking near 43% in 2027 and 2028. Public debt charges, just the interest on money already borrowed, climbing past $76 billion per year by 2029. Every province running a deficit heading into 2026 and 2027. The Government of Canada is not in a position to be generous with tax shelters. It never announces that, but the math announces it for them. So the primary lane, the TFSA, the RRSP, is getting narrower in real terms. That is side one. Most people who understand this or partially understand this land in the same place. They say, fine, I'll max the registered accounts first, and then I'll build out a non-registered portfolio, dividend payers, index funds, long-term holds. It's not as clean as a TFSA, but you pay tax on income and gains, you let it compound, you manage it carefully, and over decades it works. That is the conventional wisdom. That has been the conventional wisdom for a long time. And then April 2024 happened. The 2024 federal budget increased the capital gains inclusion rate. Before the change, when you sold an asset at a profit, a stock, a fund, a piece of property, 50% of that gain was included in your taxable income. $1 of gain, 50 cents taxable. After the change, for individuals with capital gains above $250,000 in a given year, that inclusion rate moves to 2/3. 66 cents on the dollar. When this was announced, the framing was consistent across every outlet that covered it. This is aimed at the wealthy. This affects the top of the income distribution. If you are a normal Canadian with a modest portfolio, this does not touch you. That framing is not wrong in year one, but retirement is not a one-year event. Think about what actually happens when a middle-income Canadian retires after 25 or 30 years of disciplined, non-registered investing. They are not selling a little bit every year along the way. They built the account, they let it grow, they reinvested dividends, and at some point, maybe when they stop working, maybe when they need to fund a major expense, maybe when they are restructuring income in early retirement, they sell. They sell a meaningful portion of what they built, and 25 years of compounding at 6 or 7% on a portfolio they contributed to consistently does not look like a small number at the point of sale. A couple, both 38 today, contributing $500 a month to a non-registered account for the next 27 years, earning a 7% average annual return. By 2051, that account is worth somewhere in the range of $490,000. The portion of that which represents actual gains, not the money they put in but the growth on top of it, is well above $300,000. If they sell a significant portion in a single tax year, crossing the $250,000 threshold is not a remote possibility. It is a realistic one, and at two-thirds inclusion instead of one-half, the additional tax on that event is not a rounding error. It is thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars in some scenarios. The non-registered account was supposed to be the backup lane, the place you go when the registered accounts are full or frozen. That lane just got narrower too. This is the part where it is tempting to reach for words like conspiracy or intention. Those words are not accurate and they are not useful. What is accurate is this. When a government is staring down deficits of $78 billion in a single year when it is paying $76 billion annually just in interest on existing debt, when it has an aging population pulling harder on healthcare and CPP and OAS with every passing quarter, it needs revenue. And it has a very short list of ways to get it without losing an election. Raising income tax rates is politically toxic. No party campaigns on it, and no party governs on it for long. Raising the GST has not happened in 30 years, in either direction upward, under any government of any stripe. What remains is the quiet option, the option that does not require a press conference, the option that works slowly over years in the background while attention is elsewhere. Freezing the registered account limits is not new. De-indexing brackets and limits to inflation was used in the early 1990s as a fiscal consolidation tool. Bracket creep, the phenomenon where inflation pushes people into higher tax brackets without any formal rate increase, has been documented in Canadian tax policy for decades. Ottawa has done this before. The mechanism is familiar. The current version is just running on two tracks simultaneously instead of one. And here is what makes the two-track version different from anything we have seen recently. The registered account freeze and the capital gains change are not independently painful. They are painful in sequence. The freeze closes the primary shelter. The capital gains change penalizes the most logical alternative. Together, they do not leave the disciplined middle-income saver with an obvious next move. They leave them with a harder version of the same problem and fewer tools to address it. Now, here is what the budget documents will never say directly. When the capital gains inclusion rate change was announced, the stated rationale was equity. Wealthy Canadians, the argument went, derive a disproportionate share of their income from capital gains. Raising the inclusion rate would make the system more progressive. That argument is not without basis, but let's be precise about who actually absorbs the impact. The genuinely wealthy, the family with $15 million in assets, the business owner with a $40 million holding company, they are not running a non-registered brokerage account the way a middle-income Canadian does. Their assets live inside corporate structures, family trusts, insurance wrappers. Real estate portfolios spread across multiple registered entities, each with its own tax treatment, its own timing options, its own set of tools for managing when and how gains are realized. They have tax counsel, they have flexibility. A change in the personal inclusion rate for gains above $250,000 is a factor their accountants model. It is not a crisis. The person who does not have those tools is the nurse in Mississauga who has been maxing her TFSA since 2012 and spending the last 8 years building a non-registered account on top of it. The tradesperson in Edmonton who is self-employed, has no employer pension, and built his retirement in the only accounts available to him. The dual-income family in Halifax who did everything the financial system told them to do for 25 years and is now quietly being told that the rules of the game playing have shifted. The capital gains change was framed as a tax on wealth. The people who will feel it most are the people who built wealth the slow way, in the accounts the government recommended, following the advice the government's own financial literacy campaigns promoted. That is not equity, that is something else. Let's put a real shape on what this means across time, because abstract policy language has a way of making things feel distant that are actually very close. Someone who is 38 years old today will reach the conventional retirement age around 2051. Between now and then, they have roughly 27 working years left. If the TFSA limit stays frozen or rises only in small increments, $7,500 by 2028, maybe $8,000 by 2032, the cumulative contribution room they lose relative to a properly indexed limit is not nothing. Over 27 years, the difference between a limit indexed to 2.5% average inflation and a limit that moves in occasional small steps compounds into a gap of $60,000 to $80,000 in additional room that simply does not exist. That is not a market loss. That is contribution space that was never created. Simultaneously, if they have built a non-registered account over that same period, which they should because the registered accounts alone are unlikely to be sufficient, the capital gains exposure at the point of drawdown is real. The $250,000 threshold sounds protective. It is not designed to be permanent protection. Thresholds that are not indexed to inflation shrink in real terms every year. In 2051, $250,000 of capital gains will represent a much smaller portfolio event than it does today. And underneath all of this sits the CPP and OAS reality. The maximum CPP payout for someone retiring in 2024 was approximately $1,364 per month. OAS adds roughly $700. Combined, that is just over $2,000 per month, before tax. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Toronto in 2024 was above $2,400. In Vancouver, above $2,800. The math does not work on government benefits alone for anyone retiring into a major Canadian city. It has not worked for years. The registered accounts and the non-registered account are not optional supplements to a government safety net. They are the plan. And the plan is being squeezed from both ends, so what does someone actually do with this information? The honest answer is that there is no move that fully neutralizes a double squeeze. The double squeeze is the point. When both the primary vehicle and the backup vehicle are under pressure, the person who adapts earliest loses the least. That is the realistic frame here, not a perfect solution. Damage limitation with a long enough runway to matter. The FHSA, the First Home Savings Account, remains one of the most underused tools in the Canadian tax code for those who qualify. $8,000 per year, $40,000 lifetime, with an RRSP-style deduction going in and a TFSA-style tax-free withdrawal coming out. For anyone who has not owned a home in the past 4 years and is under the income thresholds, this account is the only shelter that has not been quietly degraded. Open it, use it. The window for eligibility does not stay open indefinitely. Spousal RRSP contributions are a structural response to the capital gains problem specifically. By splitting income between partners in retirement, the goal is to keep both individuals below the thresholds where inclusion rates change and where OAS clawbacks begin. It does not eliminate the tax, it distributes it across two lower brackets instead of concentrating it in one high bracket at the point of sale. That difference, compounded over a retirement, is significant. For the non-registered account specifically, the one most exposed to the capital gains change, the discipline that matters most is not which assets you hold. It is how you time the realization of gains, selling strategically across multiple tax years rather than in a single large event. Harvesting losses in years where they exist to offset gains. Managing the sequence of withdrawals from registered and non-registered accounts simultaneously rather than sequentially. These are not exotic strategies, they are the basic architecture of a retirement drawdown plan. But they require building that plan before you need it, not when you are already in it. None of this is the answer that feels satisfying. The satisfying answer would be a government that indexes registered account limits to inflation and leaves capital gains treatment stable so that people can plan across decades with some confidence that the rules will hold. That government does not currently exist. It may not exist in the future either. What exists is the system as it is and the choices available within it. Ottawa will not send a letter when they adjust the inclusion rate again. They will not hold a press conference when the TFSA limit stays flat for a fourth consecutive year. The 2027 fiscal picture does not suggest a government that is going to become suddenly generous with tax shelters. The deficits are structural. The debt service costs are locked in. The aging population pressure is demographic. It does not respond to policy in the short term. The pressure on registered account limits and on the tax treatment of investment income is not going away. It is more likely to increase than to reverse. The double squeeze is not a prediction. The first half of it, the registered account freeze, is already 3 years in. The second half of it, the capital gains change, is already law. Both sides of the closing are already in motion. The people who are going to be least affected by this are the people who understand clearly and without comfort that the architecture of their retirement is their responsibility to build and their responsibility to defend. Not because the government is malicious, because the government has its own math problem and the quietest solution to that math problem runs directly through your savings accounts. The room is getting smaller. That is not a metaphor anymore.
If this story changed the way you see money, subscribe for more deep story about finance, power, and the system behind it.